Donald Trump continues to make the death of Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny about himself.
But not about the man who killed him. Not about Vladimir Putin. He refuses still to condemn Vladimir Putin.
Who poisoned him once, and it didn't work. And finally, he killed him. In a recorded town hall that aired on Fox News last night, Trump was asked about the money he now owes after being found liable for massive fraud in New York State. And he said that was a, quote, form of Navalny. Trump did call the opposition leader, quote, very brave while answering a separate question, but again failed to condemn Russian President Vladimir Putin, who most believe to be behind Navalny's death. Take a look.
Even if you appeal, you got to put up escrow money. That's it's a lot of dough.
It is a form of Navalny. It is a form of communism or fascism. Navalny is a very sad situation, and he's very brave. He was a very brave guy. It's a horrible thing, but it's happening in our country too. We are turning into a communist country in many ways. And if you look at it, I'm the leading candidate. I get indicted. I never heard of being indicted before.
It's such a lie. It's
disgusting.
It's such a lie on every single level. A form of Navalny, communism, a guy that lies to banks, a guy that lies to creditors, a guy that lies to everybody about his property holdings. Listen, that would get any of us thrown in jail. That would get you thrown in jail if you did that. Or that would get you, if not thrown in jail, that would get you fined. And so he's been doing this for decades. People in Manhattan have been saying he's been doing this for decades. And so finally, if there is a form of sort of Putinism in America, which, of course, it's so funny. He didn't say Putinism. He didn't bring up Vladimir Putin. But I think the most un-American thing that's happened to Donald Trump through the decades is he always gets away with it. He is Rollo Tomassi. If you saw L.A. Confidential, he's the guy that always gets away with it. And we don't know. Maybe he's going to get away with it again. Maybe that's what we know. That's what this run for the presidency is. We said it in 2019. I said it in 2019. I said if Donald Trump loses, he's going to run again. And he's going to run again if for no other reason to avoid all of the criminal actions that are going to be coming against him. The ones that we saw even before January 6th. Communism. Like, I wonder, are the people in that crowd, and I think we have to start asking this of our fellow Americans, are the people in that crowd really stupid enough to believe that if justice finally comes to one shyster, that somehow condemns America and makes it a, quote, communist nation, when actually American capitalism is stronger today than ever before? Let me just say that again.
I don't want to believe
American capitalism is stronger than ever before. We are crushing Chinese communism. I know they're really stupid people in Congress. They go, these communists. They throw that word around, having absolutely no idea what that means, no idea what Marxism means. They just like anybody they're opposed to is either a pedophile or a Marxist. That shows you, again, how bankrupt intellectually, how bankrupt philosophically, how bankrupt spiritually the Republican Party is. They attack our military. They say it's weak. They say it's pathetic. When our men and women in uniform are stronger now, relative to the rest of the world, than any time since the end of World War II. And American capitalism blowing away not only our allies, but also all of our rivals. I just got to keep saying it. Donald Trump loves Russia so much he should move there. If he moved there, he'd hate it. Tucker Carlson, why don't you move there? If you love Russia, if it's so great, if it's a land of paradise. I mean, these are the lies. This is the BS we used to hear from Soviet leaders. coming to the United States and talking on Larry King about what a worker's paradise. Go to the worker's paradise. Has a lower GDP than the state of Texas. California, this place that everybody says is the worst place. Oh, it's so horrible. California, communist state. California has the fourth largest GDP in the world. In the world. In the world. In the world. I want to bring in Heilman in a second, but I want to go to Caddy K. Caddy, when you have these idiot Republicans talking about how weak America's military is, how weak America's economy is, how Americans are communists, I think of my limited time going across the world, talking to leaders in the Middle East, talking to the leaders in Europe, talking to leaders around the world. I will tell you, over the past several years, I've not had one say, you know what the problem is with America? You all are too weak. No, what they say is, you're trouncing us economically, you're trouncing us militarily, and we don't appreciate it. They say it in different words, sometimes much harsher. I can't even repeat what one leader of a major European country said to me about what the United States was doing to them, but it was colorful. And it was about our strong economy. We're rolling over the rest of the world, and instead of celebrating America's strength, Republicans are attacking it.
Yeah, I mean, look, you and I have had this conversation many times, Joe. Look at the state of the U.S. economy at the moment compared to all other industrialized economies in the world. And it's not just the state of communist California that's doing so well. It is the United States writ large. Growth is higher. Inflation is lower. Unemployment is lower. This, you know, in global terms, this is a rocket ship. You read it. I read it, too. Jared Baker's article about the state of Russia and the state of the United States, saying how absurd it is to compare Russia to the United States at the moment. He makes a very funny comment at the beginning in a kind of spoof saying, yeah, that's because there are so many immigrants queuing up to get into Russia at the moment. At least they don't have an immigration problem because millions of people are not trying to get there. Where do people want to send their kids to university? It's here in the United States. Where do people want to come into this country to work? It's here in the United States. None of that is true of Russia. I mean, Joe Biden, you may not like Joe Biden if you're a Republican. You may not like the expansion of government. You may not like the CHIPS Act. You may not like the Inflation Reduction Act. You may not like the spending that has gone on during this administration. If you are a fiscal conservative, you may have concerns about it. But to say that, you know, Joe Biden locks up his political enemies, or if you're a journalist, you get thrown into jail if you report critical things of this administration, or that the Justice Department is warped one way or the other, it's ridiculous. I mean, there is clearly no comparison.
Insanity. Yeah, it's absolute insanity. The thing is, even if you're a small government conservative, you can't be rooting for Donald Trump to come in, because Donald Trump in 4 years raised the national debt more than any other president in American history.
Yeah.
More than any president in American history, even two-term Democratic presidents didn't raise the national debt more than Donald Trump did in one 4-year term.
But if you're a Republican voter looking at the Republicans in Congress right now, they're the ones holding up aid to Ukraine.
Right.
Aid to Ukraine.
And Israel.
To ward off Russian aggression. And you would think that would help ward off Russian aggression, while Donald Trump is Russian aggression in the form of a useful idiot.
Well, you've got money going to Israel to help them in their fight against Hamas. You've got money going to Gaza to help with the humanitarian crisis. You've got money going to Russia or to Ukraine to help in their fight against Russia. And you've got money going to Taiwan to help in their fight against communist China. And it's the House Republicans. Yeah. It's the House Republicans that are standing. It's Mike Johnson who is standing in the way of us helping our allies in Ukraine, in Israel, and in Taiwan.
A hero if he wanted, but that's not what they do.
He doesn't want to do that.
Bring in NBC News national affairs analyst John Heilman, who has been reporting from South Carolina all this week in the lead up to the primary there. So Nikki Haley is not kicking sideways anymore, as I mentioned earlier, John. She's going directly at Trump, but is it breaking through?
Good morning, guys. I think she's not kicking sideways, Mika. That's right. And, you know, yesterday she did a speech that her campaign called attention to. They said, we're going to do a big update on the state of the race. Quietly, they said she is not getting out of this race. Not only did she not get out of the race, but she made pretty clear to everybody, or as clear as she went further than she's ever gone before, in saying she's not going to get out after Saturday's primary here, where she's widely expected, if all the polls are correct, to get crushed. She's not just going to go on and stay in the race until Super Tuesday. She said yesterday she was going to stay in the race until all the votes had been cast. She's going to stay in the race all the way till the end. That was news. She also broke down a little bit and lost her. Let her emotions come through, talking about her husband, who's on his deployment. Toward the end of her speech, she had a moment where she got weepy, and yet I think it's fair to say, as former governor of the state, former popular governor of the state, who's all over the state. She's been barnstorming this state all week long. She's going to continue all the way through Friday night. Donald Trump is a spectral presence here. He flew in yesterday, did this town hall with Laura Ingraham, and flew right out again. And yet there's not a poll that doesn't have Donald Trump ahead of Nikki Haley by somewhere between 30 and 40 points. So the reality is, all you guys, I'm with you on everything you just said, everything all morning for the last half hour, all the things that Donald Trump represents, all of the rot at the core of the Republican Party. But Donald Trump is the Republican Party right now, and you can see it on display here in South Carolina in a way you didn't see it in New Hampshire, where you had an open primary. This is a pure Republican primary in a big red state, and Donald Trump is crushing Nikki Haley almost without any effort.
And the primary is on Saturday. As Mika said, Nikki Haley is no longer kicking sideways, to use a phrase she had been using for a long time. She's going right at Donald Trump. Here's some of her remarks in Greenville yesterday.
It's not normal to spend $50 million in campaign contributions on personal court cases. It's not normal to threaten people who back your opponent. And it's not normal to call on Russia to invade NATO countries. Donald Trump has done all of that and more in just the past month. He's gotten more unstable and unhinged. He spends more time in courtrooms than he does on the campaign trail. He refuses to debate. He's completely distracted. And everything is about him. He's so obsessed with his own demons from the past, he can't focus on delivering the future Americans deserve. I'm not afraid to say the hard truths out loud. I feel no need to kiss the ring. I have no fear of Trump's retribution. I'm not looking for anything from him. My own political future is of zero concern. I wish Michael was here today, and I wish our children and I could see him tonight, but we can't. He's serving on the other side of the world, where conflict is the norm, where terrorists hide among the innocent, where Iran's terrorist proxies are now attacking American troops. This is Michael's second deployment. It was hard for us to say goodbye to him the first time.
So, John, that's Governor Haley talking there about her husband, Michael, who serves in the South Carolina Army National Guard. Of course, Donald Trump has asked at some of his rallies, where's the husband? Where's the husband? Suggesting something, who knows what. We won't even go into that. But where is he? He's serving abroad, something Donald Trump couldn't contemplate doing. So the points that Governor Haley made at the beginning of those clips, everything she said about Donald Trump, everything she said about the state of the race are factually true. And in a sane political world, in a sane party, that would have some impact. But as you say, the margin is huge, even in her home state going into Saturday. So if Nikki Haley does, in fact, lose, John, what's the future here? We know she's going to campaign in Super Tuesday states coming up here. She's promised to stay in at least until then. What is the strategy from the Haley campaign?
Well, like I said a second ago, Willie, I mean, it was kind of striking. She really went further yesterday and said, seemed to suggest that she was going to stay in this race all the way until the very end. And I think there's something in that, in the sense that we know that candidates don't drop out because they're losing. They'll drop out because they've run out of money. That's the truism of presidential and all other politics. And I think Nikki Haley has discovered, so far at least, that there is a core of donors that wants to have her in this race, even if she gets beat. Now, who knows how long this will last? But so far, there's a core of donors who look at Donald Trump's future, that what's going to happen to him potentially in these court cases going forward, other possible things that might unfold in this very unpredictable climate, and say, hey, you know what? It'd be good to have Nikki Haley still in this race, still in fighting. And a lot of these states, she's not going to even win any delegates. They're winner-take-all states. So Trump is going to get himself to his magic number of delegates, probably, they think, by the second or third week of March. But she is now suggesting she wants to kind of stick around. And I think that part of the thinking is that something, it's not totally crazy, wishful thinking, that something could befall Donald Trump, particularly on the legal front, that might change the state of the race, that might create an opening for her. And I'll say one other thing is that, we play the clips of Haley going head on against Donald Trump. She's amped up the directness and the fierceness of her critiques against him. But she hits Joe Biden just as hard as she does Donald Trump in these same speeches. She did that yesterday. And there is a part of her that seems to be saying, hey, she said this directly yesterday, 75% of the country doesn't want this race. And she made a case yesterday that if you were listening to it in the abstract, you would say, hey, this woman sounds like a third party candidate. This woman sounds like an independent candidate who's trying to get ready potentially to put herself in a position where she might be someone like No Labels might decide to look at down the line.
So, I've definitely learned along the way, talking about politics, especially with you over the course of the decade, that you will take someone when they decide to come around, whenever they decide to come around. And Nikki Haley has come around. She's a good candidate. She's great on stage. And she's saying what needs to be said about Donald Trump. And every day she says a little more. And I hope she stays in this race. I hope she hangs in there no matter what happens in South Carolina. Republican voters need a viable option, an American candidate, not a Russian idiot. That's what they've got in Donald Trump. They need someone like Nikki Haley to hang in there, to give them an option that they could actually support, and a real race for the presidency, an American race.
Well, there are a lot of Main Street Republicans. There are a lot of Reagan Republicans. There are a lot of just good old fashioned small government, strong military Republicans that want an option. So why would Nikki Haley stay in the race? Jonathan Lemire,
Let's see.
There's a war of attrition. Keep going. You never know what's going to happen with Donald Trump as one case after another piles up against him. It's a war of attrition. And I would, if I were Nikki Haley, I would go to the convention. I would lose 30 contests in a row, but I would keep picking up whatever delegates I could pick up, and I would be the last woman standing, as she has said, and I would stay there to the end. Why? Because anything can happen, as we've said. Also, I must say, she's getting better.
Yeah.
She's not getting worse. She's getting better out there on the campaign
because
trail.
She's speaking authentically now.
And not just because she's going after Donald Trump, but that frees her up and gives her credibility to go after Joe Biden, to go after both parties. So that's critically important, too. And I've got to say, finally, after Donald Trump loses, whether it's in the primary or after he loses in the general election again, at that point, who is the last person standing? Who is the person that warned Republicans? You can do what you want to do, but if you pick that guy, you're going to lose. Suddenly you have a situation of where she's standing in the position of where Ronald Reagan was in 1976. After Gerald Ford lost to Jimmy Carter, he was the guy that was too crazy to win, too right-wing to win, too radical to win. And he put himself in position where everybody looked to him for 1980. And it worked. Same thing with Nikki Haley. If Donald Trump is the nominee, he's going to lose again in the fall. Nikki Haley's already said it, and she's right. After that loss, Nikki Haley can say to Republicans, I warned you, but I'm here. And let's win in 28. So why the hell should she drop out of this race before the convention?
Welcome back. 32 past the hour. We discussed last hour how a court in Moscow has once again denied the release of Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovich from pretrial detention. Meanwhile, Russia now has detained another American, this time a ballerina from Los Angeles who holds dual citizenship with Russia. Joining us now from Ukraine's Donetsk region, NBC News chief foreign correspondent Richard Engel. Richard, what more do we know about all of this?
So Russia is appearing very confident right now, despite international condemnations and expected new sanctions. Russia's accused of, just in recent days, of assassinating Alexei Navalny, now arresting an American dual national, and intensifying its military campaign here in Ukraine.
This morning, another American citizen is in custody in Russia. Ksenia Karelina, a 33-year-old ballerina who lived in Los Angeles, is a Russian-American dual national. She was detained on suspicion of treason for allegedly donating money to support Ukraine. The White House now issuing a warning to all Americans in Russia.
If you're a U.S. citizen, including a dual national, residing in or traveling in Russia, you ought to leave right now.
Russia's Federal Security Service released this video apparently showing Karelina being led into a courtroom where a judge denied her bail.
She is not safe there, and if we do not help her, so she will spend the rest of her life in jail.
As the U.S. works to respond, President Biden says he will bring new sanctions against Russia after the death of Vladimir Putin's most outspoken critic, Alexei Navalny.
I told you we'd be announcing sanctions on Russia. We'll have a major package announced on Friday.
But Russia is already under sanctions, which so far have had little impact, as Russia is shielded by China, continues to sell oil internationally, and is resupplied with weapons by Iran and North Korea. The U.S. says the sanctions are also designed to hold Russia accountable for the war in Ukraine, where Russian troops are flattening villages across the east as they advance. Russia launched new attacks overnight as Ukrainian defenders are stalled as they await weapons and ammunition blocked by Congress. Russia drove Ukrainian forces from the city of Avdiivka last weekend. A witness tells NBC News as the Russians advanced, Ukrainian troops broke rank into chaos. A Ukrainian military spokesman this morning said some Ukrainians were captured or went missing.
The Biden administration isn't acting alone when it comes to sanctions. The EU just this morning announced new sanctions on nearly 200 Russian individuals and entities accused of helping Moscow procure weapons and kidnap Ukrainian children. And the UK announced new sanctions on 6 officials from that penal colony in Siberia where Alexei Navalny died last week.
Oh. NBC's Richard Engel reporting from Ukraine. Thank you very much for that report.
And these are the people that Mike Johnson and Donald Trump keep protecting. They are standing between the aid that the Ukrainians so desperately need to stop their towns from being destroyed, to stop their children from being kidnapped, stop their women from being raped. This is perilous. You know, we quoted yesterday Mark Levin, somebody who, as I said, doesn't agree with us much. But he said this isn't theoretical. This isn't some theoretical discussion at some Ivy League campus that we're having here. No, this is not only a matter of life and death for the Ukrainians, for those of us who still believe in the greatness of the West. This is a battle for what we're supposed to believe in Western democracies: freedom, liberty, and of course the United States of America and our NATO allies protecting sovereign nations from Russian aggression, from communist Chinese aggression, all the things that Mike Johnson and Donald Trump are holding up, whether it's the defense of Taiwan, the defense of Ukraine, or the support of Israel and the aid to Gaza. I looked at a Democratic focus group last night while it was going on. It was so fascinating on so many fronts. But you talked about the issues that these Democrats and independents that lean Democratic thought were going to help Joe Biden and Democrats win. And every one of them mentioned abortion and democracy, or abortion and the economy, or abortion. And you just go down the line and the list. And that's what these Democrats and focus group were saying. And also talked about President Biden's hopes for a second term, of course, hinging on keeping the support of those independents and Democrats who backed him in the 2020 campaign. And that's the group of voters that were featured in a new focus group run by Mark Halperin and Wide World of News. Take a look. It's fascinating stuff here.
How do you think he's doing so far?
Well, I don't think he's doing well. I think, though, what you're hearing the people closest to him, the people that work with him, they all keep talking about how lucid he is and how he's so sharp and how he's on it. But we're not seeing that. That's what we need to see. It's up to them to prove to us that everything's okay.
I agree. Even if he's slow or not as articulate as he was, I think he's still able to make great decisions. He's got surrounding himself with wonderful advisors, and I have every faith.
I think his mental acuity is fine. I think it has more to do with his physical appearance. And I think when you listen to him, the cadence of his words is slowed down. But a lot of that is natural aging. He's 81.
If you were with Joe Biden and he said, Tracy, I'm going to step down and not run, what would you say to talk him out of it?
I would say if you do that, then Kamala's running and she will lose.
Raise your hand if you agree with Tracy that Vice President Harris would lose to Donald Trump if she were the nominee, that you're confident she would lose. Raise your hand. All right. So 4 of you say, yes, you're confident. And are the other 3 of you confident she would win?
Oh.
Or you just don't know?
Just don't know.
I don't know. Raise your hand if you think that if Joe Biden did step aside, as a lot of people are urging him to do, that she would be the nominee. Raise your hand if you think she would be the nominee if he stepped aside. All right. 2 of you think. All right. Let's go around. Joe Biden steps down, and you can pick the Democratic nominee amongst people who are constitutionally eligible. Who would you pick as the strongest person to beat Donald Trump? Not as the best president, but the person who you'd have the greatest confidence could beat Donald Trump.
Andy Beshear.
Ashley?
Gavin Newsom.
Judy?
No, I totally don't believe in Gavin Newsom. I would do Pritzker or Beshear. Yeah.
Tracy?
Michelle Obama.
I know you said that. I know you said that for a purpose.
I would say Newsom, or I'm excited for Shapiro down the road at some point.
Shapiro,
yeah.
Good one.
Josh Shapiro.
Yeah.
Okay. Lori?
Gretchen Whitmer or Amy Klobuchar. Gretchen Whitmer.
Okay.
Whitmer could beat his ass.
Harvey?
Well, my choice has always been Admiral McRaven.
Oh.
But I don't know that he has a chance to. I think Josh Shapiro, I would say, after that.
He's too young.
Okay. Too young.
or Mayor Pete. I love Mayor Pete.
Mayor Pete would never win.
No, he's too young. Not yet.
I like that.
It's gone off the rails.
Too young.
Too old,
for
too
somebody
young.
In their 50s.
What exactly? No, this was fascinating on a number of, the Kamala Harris conversation was really interesting. It's one we should have. But I just want to point out that one voter who was talking about Joe Biden not being as articulate as he was before. Joe Biden was never articulate, okay? He has a stutter, and he's like a real guy, and he's always talked that way. Maybe a little slower,
right?
But so what? And I think also when he gets pissed off, the stutter kicks in a little bit.
Yeah.
That's what I've noticed. But I thought that was an interesting assessment because I don't think Joe Biden is this flourishing, speech maker of the world, although he does a great job and he gets the job done.
Right.
But he has always been connective, like a real guy, like he could sit at the VFW at a bar with anybody.
Yeah, and again, it's what Andy Card once said about George W. Bush. He said elites always made fun of George W. Bush for stumbling around, but actually working voters that appealed to him, that he wasn't too slick. They felt like he was one of them. By the way, if you're sitting there and you wonder about the laughter when Michelle Obama's name came up, this is an ongoing sort of thing with a lot of these focus groups. Everybody wants Michelle Obama to run. And Mark Halperin keeps saying, as do a lot of others, that's never going to happen. She didn't even want Barack Obama to run for state senator. So she ain't getting in politics anytime soon.
Done.
But Jim Messina, I'd love to go to you, and I'd love to get your insights, especially on what the first voter said, but just your overall insights on what these Democrats said. So many fascinating things about Josh Shapiro and who they were looking to.
Great bench.
Andy Beshear, holy cow, Gretchen Whitmer. But the first woman who spoke said, I keep hearing how Biden's together and he's articulate behind the scenes, would like to see more of that. I've spent a good bit of time talking to Joe Biden one-on-one, on the phone, throughout the presidency. I can tell you he's more together on foreign policy if you sit and talk to him than anybody else I've talked to.
Is he supposed to do cartwheels? What do they want him to do?
No, there's a wide gulf between what he's doing right now and doing cartwheels. So, Jim, I actually agree with her sentiment. The Biden I see, the Biden I know, can run laps around Donald Trump. The question is, how do you get that Biden out so other Americans can see him instead of a gaffe at an angry 6-minute press conference?
Yep, Joe, I totally agree. And the campaign and the White House agree as well. I mean, that's what campaigns are. They're opportunities to get the candidate out there, to get him in situations where the American public can make the judgments you're talking about. And it's one of the things, if you think about the free moments you have in a presidential campaign to make your case directly to the American voters, there are really two free moments: the State of the Union and the Democratic National Convention speech. And so the State of the Union coming up on March 7th is another really important moment for him to both make his case to the American public about what he's doing and where he's going to take them, and to draw the straight contrast with the Republicans in the House and in the MAGA movement about what they want to do. And like, the House is doing everything they can to help Joe Biden right now by literally doing nothing. And Biden now needs to go out there and campaign to the American people. We're 251 days before the election. We'll have lots of opportunity to see the president. And I totally agree with you. When they see him interact with voters, when they see him in the town halls, you know, their moment, they will look at themselves and say, this is the guy who we can trust for the next 4 years. And that'll be a really important moment for these voters who want to see that.
Molly, we heard a lot in that focus group, number one, about a deep bench for the Democrats. You go down that list of governors, add in Wes Moore, Gavin Newsom. It's an incredible list, but that's for another time. Joe Biden is the candidate here. It seems to me, listening to those voters and just talking to people casually, it's a question of style over substance. They cringe a little when they see the president on TV. They go, oh, he looks old. But if you look at what he's accomplished, shouldn't that matter more than how you think he appears on television? And, by the way, in contrast to the alternative of what could come if he's elected.
Well, one of the things Trump had going for him in 2016 was that he was famous, but he had no voting record. So he could say, I was a Democrat. I'm from New York. I'm not this zealot. Now, fast forward, he overturned Roe, right? He was the architect of that. So he is not the Rorschach he used to be, which I think is very good news for Joe Biden. What I would say is, you know, I watch C-SPAN, so I see Biden out there all the time. The problem is that normal Biden doesn't get coverage the way that Biden gaffes get coverage. And so, like, last week, he was traveling, he was doing press conferences. I heard him, you know, do questions and answers, and he was fine. Is he a gifted orator? No. Has he ever been a gifted orator? No. You know, does he need to be a gifted orator? I mean, last night, Trump said that he got Navalny. He got Navalny. Like, the man destroys the English language.
Also in that Fox News town hall, Trump essentially admitted to killing the bipartisan border security bill in Congress because it would have, quote, made it much better for the opposing side. Biden.
Why were you against the House, against the Senate border deal, the bipartisan border?
Well, they allow 5,000 people a week. Number one, that, but it also made it much better for the opposing side. I don't know if you've heard this, but I came up with this one: migrant crime. There's crime, there's violent crime, there's migrant crime. We have a new category of crime. It's called migrant crime, and it's going to be worse than any other form of crime.
Yeah, actually, that's so many things about that are wrong. So many things about that are a lie. I mean, first of all, one stat after another shows that what he says, migrant crime worse than all other crimes. One stat after another just says that's not true. Of course, there's individual examples, terrible examples like we saw in New York. But overall, if facts matter, if numbers matter, if data matters, what he said there's a lie. Saying that the bill lets in 5,000 migrants a week, that's a lie. But Chris Matthews, I just want to zero in because you worked in the House, and it's just extraordinary that you actually have the President of the United States that talks about migrant crime. So let's just say it's the worst thing in the world. Let's take his lie. And just for argument's sake, say, okay, Donald, we'll accept your lie that migrant crime, you believe migrant crime is the worst crime in the world. So what does Donald Trump do? He admits at the same time he's going to allow, quote, migrant crime, which is the worst crime, as he says, to continue for another year. He's going to allow fentanyl to continue to flood across the border for another year. He's going to allow Americans to die because of fentanyl for another year. He's going to allow, what they say that spies from other countries, Chinese spies from other countries are coming across the southern border. He's going to allow that for another year. And he admits it, that he's going to allow all this to happen because he says, quote, it's good for the other side. So he's going to kill the bill because he doesn't want James Lankford, a conservative Republican, to work with Democrats on a problem that he says is the worst problem in America. Kind of hard to sort through that, Chris, isn't it?
Well, the thing is that the Republicans and Trump will still benefit from the border issue. If they cut a deal and they really squeeze the Democrats and get them to do something they don't want to do, which is get really tough on the asylum issue and narrow the definition of what it is and really separate the wheat from the chaff and let the right people in and keep the wrong people out, he still will have the border issue. He's clearly anti-immigrant, and clearly that's a good issue for him. So even if he cut a deal like this, it doesn't make any sense. He's got the problem. The American people have the problem, and he still would have won the fight. It's an issue. The border works for the Republicans. It's a fact. Like inflation, it just does. People don't like prices, they're going to vote Republican. So I think he really was. I don't understand this because, again, I'm going back to the House Republicans. I know they have a narrow, very narrow advantage there holding the majority. But there's some good things they could be doing here. They could be doing something about the border, like the Senate did. They can do this. It's doable, and they don't want to do it. They're afraid of taking him on Putin, and I don't understand what an anti-communist party like the Republican Party has always been, why they can't be anti-Putin. What is it? Putin puts people away. He invades other countries. He's like Hitler that way. First, it's Munich. By the way, it's amazing. We just had the meeting in Munich. Munich, 1938. They took Czechoslovakia. 1939, they took Poland. 1940, they took France. Don't you see the pattern here? Doesn't everybody see what Putin's up to? One country at a time. Right now, it's trying to take Ukraine's freedom away from it. This is good Republican ideology. Where are the Republicans? Don't they have to go back to their people and say, I know you love Trump, but here's what I believe. Here's what I believe. We got to stop communism in the world. We got to stop this guy Putin because he acts like a communist. He's a tyrant. Why don't we do something about him? They don't seem to want to move. He said he likes Navalny because he's being treated like Navalny. He wouldn't even mention Putin last night. By the way, I think Laura Ingraham knew everything right last night. I've always had suspicions that they're much smarter than they act on television, those people over there at Fox. They all know what's going on. They know what we know. We don't have some secret information. Trump's wrong. He's dead wrong. They know that.
Chris Matthews, my question to you is, should Nikki Haley stay in the game till the bitter end?
Yeah, I think as long as she can get money, I mean, money is the name of the game here. I think Ken Langone, the big Republican anti-Trumpers, I think are still available. The Chris Christie crowd. I think she might not do as well as she hoped to do this Saturday, though. I don't think she's going to do better than she did in New Hampshire. I think it's going to be tough. But I think she's probably going to get close to 40, which is fighting. I think she's fighting it right now, and I think she ought to stick in it. I think she's the last non-Trump candidate standing.
Eugene Daniels, you were in South Carolina. Give us a sense of what you saw on the ground there.
Yeah, and I'm headed back tomorrow. You know, what you're seeing is that it is a completely different state than it was when Nikki Haley was the governor of that state, right? The Trumpism of the Republican Party is alive and well there, right? I'm driving around the community that my parents grew up in, and I'm seeing humongous Trump signs, not one Nikki Haley signs, and it shows his dominance there, right? And you talk to people who have worked for Nikki Haley, and as I have over the last few weeks in South Carolina, they say that she is not a woman, and we've seen this, who is going to quit, that her tenacity is to the extreme, and more importantly for them, for some of those people who want to see her have a political future, that could also possibly be her downfall here, and thinking about what does it look like post 2024 for her in this Republican Party. And I think the hope that she is having, and that people in South Carolina who want to see her continue, whether they be voters or operatives, is that there needs to be some kind of opposition to Donald Trump. She keeps talking about this country not doing coronations, but also, and more importantly, they are hoping that something might happen, right? There's all these legal cases against Donald Trump. And so there's still a little bit of hope, a glimmer of hope that something may happen and he can't be the nominee, and that she wants to be that person who can pick up the ball if it's dropped.
So, Chris, it is at times to be surprised by something that Donald Trump says, but yet over the last couple of days, he basically compared himself to Alexei Navalny, not just because he has been persecuted, he believes, by the state. He suggests that, like Navalny, he is a sort of martyr for the cause, if you will, and he even went so far as to say so about the civil fraud verdict that was rendered in the last few days that will cost him $350 million or so. Just give us your sense on this, just where Donald Trump is, and why would people respond to such a nonsensical comparison like that?
You know, I think he's starting to realize that he doesn't know much history, let's face it. But he must be aware of the fact that the old Soviet Union, like the old Nazi Party in Germany, was a tyranny. And people like Hitler or Stalin and his successors could knock off people, could get rid of people like Navalny. This is what the old communist world was all about. That's what they do over there. If you don't like your opponent, you get rid of them. You knock them off. And this is what we all remember about that. I remember when Stalin died in grade school, and the nuns came out and announced that Stalin had died and we should pray. And I had no idea what we were praying for, except we're happy he's gone. You know, he's the worst of them. He killed 20 million people. But this is what they do, these tyrants. Look at those soldiers as Putin comes into his office there with their heads back, they're cocked back like that. How weird that is. How weird that dedication is, I guess you call it. Now, I think Trump knows this. This is why he lied about saying he's the new Navalny. You know, the idea, the old thing, when fascism comes to America, it will be called anti-fascism. I mean, that's the game he's playing. But I think he knows, in his dim-witted way, that he cannot be on the side of this Stalinist regime that can knock out people like Navalny. Navalny's wife is out there as a leader of this organization now. She's going to fight. And I think he has a glimmer that he's on the wrong side. It's also on the abortion thing. I want to talk to Mika, but I got to tell you, Mika, this is interesting how he's fading away from the 16-week ban here. Because the big question to ask about him is, okay, buddy, what's the consequence? What's the punishment? What's the punishment? Because you said you want to see some punishment for women. What will be your plan to punish women who disobey this 16-week ban? I think he's getting a little nervous about the craziness of the abortion ban. I think he's afraid of it. I think he's afraid of coming out for Putin against Navalny. This is the first time he's actually shown some at least conceptual problem, a reality of his problem, which is he's lying. He's lying. The communists are not the good guy. This post-Stalinist world of Russia is not the good guys. The idea of the subway over there that Tucker Carlson is bragging about, that doesn't make them the good guys. It's crazy. And I just wish some of the older people, older than him, older than Biden, who remember the Cold War, remember who the good guys were and who the bad guys were. Just say it. Why doesn't somebody stand up to him and say, in South Carolina, you're wrong. The Soviet Union and what's come since then with Putin is the bad guys. They're the bad. Right. They're the true evil ones, and they won't. They got to stand up. I hope people get behind Nikki Haley, Langone, the people with money, and get behind her and really fight for this and say this is not the Republican Party, not just of Ronald Reagan, but going all the way back to Harry Truman. This was a bipartisan fight with the Soviets, and it's unbelievable they are out there kissing the butt of Vladimir Putin. It's unbelievable. Not the ring, but the butt. They're really acting like this, and it's awful.